The Shema is a central prayer in Judaism that's recited daily by observant Jews. It's found in the book of Deuteronomy in the Hebrew Bible and in our Old Testament. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 to 9, the Shema emphasizes the oneness of God and the commandment to love God with all one's heart, soul, and might. This passage also mentions the importance of keeping God's words in one's heart and passing them down to future generations. So let's have a closer look at the Shema. This comes from the New Revised Standard Version of the Catholic edition of the Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 to 9. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. Keep these words that I am commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand, fix them as an emblem on your forehead, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So, the words themselves are very much a commandment to observe. But let's look at it through the lens of the three worlds of the text. The world behind the text. This refers to the historical and cultural context that influenced the writing of the text, and in ancient Near Eastern cultures, kings would often place images of themselves throughout their kingdoms to symbolize their authority and presence. These images, known as images of the king, served as reminders of the king's power and were meant to be respected and obeyed. In a similar way, the commandments of the Shema to bind them as a sign on the hand, fix them as an emblem on the forehead, and write them on the doorposts and gates can be seen as a way of symbolizing the presence and authority of God in the lives of the Israelites. The Shema was written during a time when the Israelites were surrounded by polytheistic cultures that worshipped multiple gods. In this context, the Shema emphasizes the uniqueness and singularity of the God of Israel. It teaches that there is only one true God, and that the Israelites should love and worship him alone. And in that binding that's mentioned, when you think of an Orthodox Jew, they use tallit, which is the box that is strapped to their head and also to their arm. To keep the word of God, the Shema is within it. To observe this rule, quite literally. Then you have the world of the text. The world of the text refers to the content and meaning of the text itself, the main characters in the text, and what happens. In the Shema, the image of God is portrayed as the Lord who is the Israelites' God. The phrase, "The Lord is our God, the Lord alone," emphasizes the exclusive relationship between God and the Israelites. It conveys the idea that God is not just a distant deity, but a personal God who cares for and guides his people. This understanding of God as their God creates a sense of belonging and responsibility among the Israelites. The world of the text also looks at the text features and structure. So let's have a little look at that. It has connection with other biblical texts. Understanding the connection between the Shema and other biblical texts can deepen our understanding of its significance. The Shema is closely related to the Ten Commandments in Exodus chapter 20, verse 1 to 17, and the Great Commandment in Mark 12, 28 to 34. These texts share the common themes of love for God, obedience to his commandments, and the importance of passing on these teachings to future generations. The structure of the Shema is quite deliberate. It's comprised of 3 sections, primarily taken from the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 to 9, and 11, verses 13 to 21, and Numbers chapter 15, verses 37 to 41. So let's have a little look at each section. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 to 9, this section begins with the famous phrase, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." It emphasizes the belief in monotheism and the importance of loving God with all one's heart, soul, and strength. It also instructs the Israelites to internalize these teachings and pass them on to future generations. The second section, Deuteronomy 11, verse 13 to 21. This section expands on the themes introduced in the previous section. It emphasizes the rewards and blessings that come from obeying God's commandments and warns of the consequences of turning away from God. And Numbers chapter 15, verse 37 to 41, this section introduces the commandment to wear tzitzit, the fringes on the corners of one's garments, as a reminder of God's commandments. It serves as a visual symbol to help the Israelites remember their covenant with God. The Shema is a form of religious proclamation known as a creed. That's the genre. A creed's a statement of belief or faith that serves as a foundational declaration for a religious community. It functions as a creed for the Jewish people, affirming their belief in the oneness of God and their commitment to love and obey Him. And it has a purpose and significance in terms of the structure and genre. It serves to emphasize monotheism. By starting with the declaration of God's oneness, the Shema reinforces the belief in monotheism, which was a radical departure from the polytheistic beliefs of neighboring cultures at the time, where they had many gods. Another purpose was to teach and to help internalize. The repetition of the Shema in daily prayers and rituals helps to reinforce the teachings and values it contains. By reciting these words regularly, the Israelites were encouraged to internalize and live out the principles of love and obedience to God, so much like our morning prayer does for us. Another purpose is passing on the faith. The Shema's instructions to teach these commandments to future generations highlights the importance of passing on the faith from one generation to the next. It serves as a reminder of the responsibility to ensure the continuity of the Jewish faith and its teachings, and through tradition, has implications for us as Catholics and Christians. The genre of the Shema as a creed also holds significance. It provides unity and identity. It's a unifying statement for the Jewish people, affirming their shared beliefs and identity as a monotheistic community, people of the book, and faith and commitment. By reciting the Shema, individuals express their personal commitment and faith, reinforcing their relationship with God. Take a moment to think about the prayers that we use each morning in our liturgies, and for many of us in our hearts on a daily basis. Prayer isn't something that needs to be said aloud. It's a conversation with God. Then we come to the world in front of the text, which is where we come into consideration. Who might this text be relevant for today? And don't just say Jewish people, because it goes far beyond that. The Shema can be relevant to anyone seeking a deeper understanding of monotheism, love for God, and the importance of passing on religious teachings to future generations. It's particularly relevant to Jewish individuals and communities who recite the Shema daily as part of their religious practice, which is pretty obvious, but it also has the opportunity to open us up to the process and the benefits of daily prayer. What are some of the messages from or about God that modern believers can take from this text in their time and their place? Well, you can take away the message of the oneness of God, emphasizing the belief in monotheism in a world that often promotes multiple gods or secular ideologies. So the idea of greed, of celebrity, that's very much putting icons, people into the place that God has traditionally held. The Shema also highlights the importance of loving God with all one's heart, soul, and strength, reminding believers of the need for a deep and personal relationship with God. You might ask yourself, is there anything in this text that might be open to challenge or questioning by a modern reader? Well, of course there is. A modern reader might question the exclusivity of the Shema's monotheistic belief in a diverse and pluralistic world. We live in a complex world where religion has lost its place for many people. And so, of course, you're going to challenge and wonder. Additionally, those who question the relevance of authority of traditional religious beliefs might challenge the emphasis on passing on the religious teachings to future generations. And these are important, if sometimes difficult, conversations to have, but they're not conversations to shy away from. Modern readers might also bring their cultural, social, and personal experiences to the text, which will definitely shape their interpretations. They may also have access to different translations, commentaries, and interpretations that weren't available to the original author. And if you've ever written something and had that text misunderstood, you'll understand how easy that can be. You might also ask how gender, culture, or life experience, including experiences with religion or religious groups, affects the way you as a modern reader might respond to the text. How can your experience as the reader add to your richness of its interpretation? Because gender, culture, and life experiences can influence how a modern reader relates to and interprets the text. For example, a reader from a marginalized community, a refugee, somebody who's entered the country with a different culture and language, might find resonance in the Shema's call for justice and equality. It's the same with our First Nations people. They may challenge it too. The experience of the reader can add depth and nuance to the interpretation, allowing for a more diverse and inclusive understanding of the text when people are brave enough to discuss it. So as we complete this exploration of the Shema as a text that is an important and foundational text for Judaism and in the Old Testament for us, I want you to consider the following question. How does the concept of the image of God in the Shema shape or influence the way you understand your relationship with God and your responsibilities as a believer? And for some of you, you may say that you're not a believer, but you are at school in the context of a Catholic community. And whatever your personal independent feelings are, you are operating within a Catholic community who hold very strong views about our role to be hands of service and hospitality, compassion and courage. So think about how the Shema helps you reflect on your life. And in your OneNote or on a document, take time to reflect. You'll have 5 minutes of free time. The music will continue, and you will have the luxury of being still in a busy day.